In the dense woodlands of New England, where ancient trees block the sunlight and mist curls between gnarled trunks, dwells a predator unlike any other. Not animal, not man, but something that understands human nature well enough to exploit our every weakness. The Wampanoag people named this entity PUKWUDGIE, little person from the wilderness, a name that masks its lethal intentions behind a diminutive stature. Don't be fooled by its size. Standing barely 2 or 3 feet tall, with grotesquely disproportionate features, an enlarged head, elongated nose, and fingers too long and nimble for their stubby arms, these creatures possess strength that defies their frame. Their skin ranges from smooth grey to a mottled, bark-like texture that allows perfect camouflage against tree trunks. Most distinctive are their eyes, unnaturally luminous in darkness, displaying an intelligence far too calculating for comfort, gleaming with malicious mischief moments before they strike. What makes the PUKWUDGIE truly dangerous isn't their physical power, but their perfect understanding of human psychology. These aren't mindless monsters. They are patient hunters who study their prey, learning individual habits, preferences, and most importantly, emotional vulnerabilities. They observe from shadows for days, weeks, sometimes months before selecting the perfect lure tailored specifically to each victim. Their hunting methodology reveals disturbing sophistication. First comes surveillance, tracking potential victims who wander alone through their territories, particularly those who seem emotionally distressed or disoriented. Next, the mimicry PUKWUDGIEs possess remarkable vocal abilities, perfectly replicating human voices, particularly children's cries or calls from loved ones. On moonless nights, hikers report hearing their names called in the exact voice of distant family members, drawing them off marked trails into trackless wilderness. Most insidious is their use of light manipulation, creating small, dancing illuminations mistaken for lanterns, flashlights, or campfires that suggest safety to lost travelers. These phantom lights, which the Algonquian peoples called will-o-wisps, recede continuously as victims approach, leading them deeper into territory from which there is no return, swamps, cliff edges, or straight to the PUKWUDGIE's preferred killing grounds. The kill itself demonstrates their cruel efficiency. While some victims simply disappear without a trace, those unfortunate enough to be found display distinctive wounds. Tiny arrows tipped with neurotoxin that paralyzes instantly, but leaves consciousness intact, allowing victims to experience fully what follows. Survivors, few as they are, describe being dragged while paralyzed, hearing multiple high-pitched voices discussing their fate in an unknown language, before being positioned at cliff edges or riversides for what comes next. For the PUKWUDGIE doesn't simply kill, it harvests both body and spirit. Traditional Wampanoag accounts describe elaborate rituals where victims are positioned precisely at locations where death releases maximum spiritual energy, places where the boundary between worlds thins naturally. This energy feeding provides the PUKWUDGIE with power far beyond their physical form, allowing them to perform their signature abilities, vanishing instantly, creating phantom lights, or most terrifyingly, influencing human emotions directly, amplifying negative feelings until victims become susceptible to their lures. Their territory centers primarily on boundary spaces, not just geographically but spiritually significant transitions. Locations where major historical shifts occurred, particularly sites of conflict, tragedy, or cultural displacement, serve as power centers for these beings. This explains their concentration around colonial-era boundaries and historic tribal territories of New England, particularly southeastern Massachusetts, where colonial displacement of Wampanoag people created spiritual disruption these entities exploit. Native law specifically warns about Freetown Fall River State Forest, where numerous disappearances over centuries share common elements. Victims who wandered off alone, drawn by voices or lights, never to return. Modern encounters reveal the PUKWUDGIE's perfect adaptation to contemporary human psychology. Their lures have evolved from simple voice mimicry to exploiting technological dependencies. Hikers report smartphone navigation suddenly directing them off established trails. GPS devices showing phantom help locations that don't exist, or most effectively, text messages appearing to come from companions, suggesting meeting points deep in unmarked wilderness. Protection against these entities requires precise knowledge. Traditional Wampanoag defense involves specific ceremonial preparations before entering known PUKWUDGIE territories, particularly carrying tobacco as offering and cedar as repellent. Modern hikers who respect local indigenous warnings report similar precautionary practices, never hiking alone, informing others of exact routes with strict return times. And most importantly, absolute refusal to follow voices, lights, or digital directions that deviate from established paths, no matter how convincing or urgent they seem. Most effective protection comes from skepticism itself. The PUKWUDGIE's power relies on exploiting hope and trust. Those who maintain healthy suspicion of too convenient rescue or unexpected help when lost stand a better chance of survival. Native traditions emphasize that these entities cannot physically force victims to follow. They require willing participation, making informed caution the strongest defense. So tonight, when hiking back to your campsite after dark and you hear your friend calling from just beyond the tree line, when your phone shows a shortcut through unmarked woods, when you glimpse what seems like a ranger's flashlight beckoning from unmarked territory, remember the PUKWUDGIE. Question every coincidence. Trust established paths over alluring shortcuts. And understand that some predators don't need physical strength when they have mastered the art of making you complicit in your own demise. For in the space between hope and desperation, between rational caution and emotional response, the PUKWUDGIE finds its hunting ground, not through force, but through perfect understanding of what makes you abandon good judgment for just long enough to take that first step off the path. Following a child's cry or loved one's call until you're standing at the edge, paralyzed by their poison, fully conscious as small hands position you for the final fall.